Now there's the radioisotope half-lives. In that picture there is carbon-14. As it decays it loses a beta particle or electron and it becomes nitrogen-14. Now the reverse happens in the upper layers of the atmosphere or the stratosphere of the Earth. Nitrogen-14 gets hit by cosmic rays and it gets energized by the sun rays and it gains that particle to become carbon-14 again. That's actually how carbon-14 is created. Now carbon-14 occurs in our food and in living organisms, and it starts to decay back to nitrogen-14 over time, the moment we or animals die, or plants for that matter. And it's that ratio that scientists measure to determine whether the age based on a half-life, which is the time required for half the atoms in a given sample to undergo radioactive or nuclear decay, to subside. So the accuracy therefore depends on assumptions concerning the past intensity of cosmic radiation. And that's according to Oxford Science Dictionary, which is this one here, the student edition. And let me just read as a refresher Genesis 2 again. Only 2 verses. I'll just read it out. Genesis 2 from verse 5b and 6. For the Lord God had not caused it to rain upon the earth, and there was not a man to till the ground, but there went up a mist from the earth and watered the whole face of the ground. Now it's clear to me at least that the earth was quite different back then. It could have been a global rainforest, could have been under the protection of a water canopy, and there are various creationist views on this. Obviously it requires much tweaking and research in order to be more plausible. However, it's only the minority of people working on that, and therefore the strong promotion of evolutionary theory as opposed to creationist theory. So, looking at BiblePlus.org's graph, they propose an equilibrium level before the flood as being much lower of atmospheric carbon-14 than what is the case currently today. So organisms living prior to the flood would have absorbed little or no carbon-14 during their lives, since there was little or no carbon-14 in the air that they breathed. Thus, using current dating methods, pre-flood organisms would give the appearance of dating in the order of millions or billions of years old, yet in fact they are not that old.
Victor, I don't understand what carbon-14 is. Is it like a 14 carbon long chain, or what does that mean? Or is it talking about something to do with the atom itself?
Yeah.
It's to do with the atom.
That's right. There's a difference in the proton number and
14 neutrons or something.
Yeah, they differ in their mass, and so they have different neutrinos actually.
Right.
But I could look into that, as it was clear in that clip, in that video clip. But yeah, I could browse around and show you a picture perhaps a bit later.
So that's how it changes from nitrogen to carbon. It's actually a change in the number of protons or something.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So it actually becomes something different because it's unstable. That's the whole basis of using radioisotopes, because they're not stable.
Okay. So there's no
they do
reason
decay.
really to assume that that form of carbon would have been present in the same quantities in the distant past.
Exactly, because
It could have
it's
been
assumed that the decay is constant throughout time, which is infinite. And that's quite a huge assumption to make scientifically, actually. I'm surprised that scientists never mention that, although it is mentioned in the Oxford Science Dictionary. So, yeah. So let's say if the canopy theory is plausible or even true in terms of protecting the Earth from the cosmic rays before the flood, much more so than the ozone layer today, we could have expected more impact from the sun and deterioration of our DNA before the flood than after the flood. And obviously that evokes all sorts of changes in terms of the equilibrium levels of carbon-14 after and before the flood. So although it's a theoretical curve, in principle it's quite logical, like you've just
There's a fundamental change to the whole state of things.
That's right. Yet if you don't hold that the Bible is true, as just from the sheer point of view, from a historical point of view, as a document that we should take seriously, then it's easy just to denounce that and to even ignore, as most scientists like to do. So that brings us to the age of the Earth, and actually I've put a bit of pun in there. The Earth is actually quite old, several thousand years, but we've got to say it's young in order to set us apart from the view out there that the Earth is billions of years old, which we'll be able to analyze more closely using that chart. And there's Adam, creation of Adam, about 100 years before Christ. And you can see the huge time expectancies of the people that lived before the flood. Even Noah lived right through it, and quite a number of years after he landed on Ararat. Methuselah died in the year of the flood. Shem, interestingly, dies after Abraham. So look at all the generations that Shem knew, yet they were his offspring and he outlived most of them, except Eber. And the flood there about 4,500 years ago, not BC as I've said previously. But I'm sure you picked up from that last week. Now, Adam therefore knew his great-great-great-great-great-grandson. And some sources suggest that creation year is in 4004 BC. The very popular Usher and Lightfoot publication.
Doesn't that say 4106?
Yeah, this is not according to Usher and Lightfoot. This is according to this group of people that have slightly different ideas in terms of the time. There's quite varied opinion on that, but roughly it comes to about 4,000 years before Christ.
What did you say Asher's was?
The one author's name is Usher. I think he was he was a clergyman anyway, but he worked it out using the genealogies from the Bible. And then Lightfoot was another person that later came, and they came up with that date together as 4004 BC, using biblical genealogies like I've shown in that chart. But for some reason BiblePlus.org reckons it's a bit closer to 4106 BC. But however it is, I don't think we can be that accurate anyway in terms of what's been given there, but maybe we can. But it's quite clear that the earth is not millions or billions of years old. And that's my point using that chart. Also, Adam was created on the 6th day. So pretty much that's the beginning of the universe, not the end as evolutionists who have us believe. So it's quite the opposite in theory. It actually cannot be more opposite than that. Creation week. In Genesis, the word day or yom has certain grammatical context, any of whom alone point strongly to 24-hour days. It's according to Sarfati, 2004. In this book,